The Spanish Armada of 1588 was one of the largest and most ambitious naval operations of the early modern period. It was organized by King Philip II of Spain with the objective of invading England, overthrowing Queen Elizabeth I, and restoring Catholic rule. The campaign was the result of years of political, religious, and military conflict between the two kingdoms. By the mid-16th century, Spain was the dominant European power. It controlled vast territories in the Americas, the Mediterranean, and the Low Countries. England, under Elizabeth I, had established itself as a Protestant state and actively supported Protestant rebels in the Spanish Netherlands. English privateers, operating with royal approval, regularly attacked Spanish shipping and treasure fleets. These actions caused significant economic losses and intensified hostility between the two nations. Philip II viewed England as both a political threat and a religious enemy. After the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1587, Philip considered Elizabeth illegitimate and believed England should be returned to Catholic control. Plans for an invasion had been discussed for years, but only in the late 1580s did Philip commit fully to a large-scale naval expedition. The invasion plan relied on coordination between naval and land forces. The Armada was not intended to conquer England alone. Its primary role was to secure control of the English Channel and escort the Spanish Army of Flanders, commanded by Alexander Farnese, Duke of Parma, across the Channel from the Netherlands. Parma's army consisted of approximately 30,000 experienced soldiers, but it lacked sufficient transport ships. Without the Armada's protection, a crossing would be impossible. The Armada was assembled from ships across the Spanish Empire. It included large galleons, armed merchant vessels, galleasses equipped with heavy artillery, and smaller support ships. In total, the fleet numbered around 130 vessels, carrying approximately 8,000 sailors and 19,000 soldiers, along with thousands of guns and large quantities of ammunition, food, and supplies. Command of the Armada was given to Alonso Pérez de Guzmán, Duke of Madino. He was a respected nobleman and administrator, but had limited naval experience. He initially tried to refuse the appointment, citing his lack of expertise, but Philip II insisted. Strategic decisions were tightly controlled by the king, limiting Medina Sidonia's ability to adapt plans during the campaign. The Armada departed from Lisbon in May 1588. Almost immediately, it encountered difficulties. Storms damaged several ships and forced the fleets to seek repairs at the port of La Coruca in northern Spain. This delay disrupted schedules and depleted supplies. The fleet finally set sail again in July, already behind its intended timetable. England was aware of the approaching fleet through an effective intelligence network. Coastal defenses were prepared, and the English Navy was mobilized. Unlike Spain's fleet, English ships were generally smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. They were designed for long-range gunnery rather than close-quarters boarding, reflecting a shift in naval warfare doctrine. The first contact between the two fleets occurred off the coast of Cornwall. The English fleet, commanded by Lord Howard of Effingham, with experienced captains such as Francis Drake, John Hawkins, and Martin Frobisher, began harassing the Spanish formation. The English avoided direct engagement, instead using long-range cannon fire to damage Spanish ships while staying out of reach of Spanish boarding parties. As the Armada advanced up the Channel, several skirmishes took place near Plymouth, Portland, and the Isle of Wight. The Spanish maintained a defensive crescent formation designed to protect their transports, but this limited their ability to maneuver. The English ships repeatedly attacked from a distance, inflicting damage while conserving ammunition more effectively than the Spanish, whose guns were slower to reload and less accurate at long range. Despite these engagements, the Armada remained largely intact as it reached the Strait of Dover and anchored near Calais in early August. The fleet waited there for instructions and hoped to rendezvous with Parma's army. However, communication between the Armada and Parma proved extremely difficult. Parma's troops were not ready to embark, and Dutch rebel forces controlled many of the shallow coastal waters, preventing Spanish transport ships from reaching the Armada. While the Spanish waited at Calais, the English prepared a decisive move. On the night of August 7th, English forces launched 8 fireships toward the anchored Armada. These unmanned vessels were set ablaze and allowed to drift with the tide toward the Spanish fleet. Although the fireships caused little direct damage, they created panic. Spanish crews feared explosive fire vessels, similar to those used in earlier Mediterranean warfare. In the confusion, ships cut their anchor cables and scattered, breaking the Armada's defensive formation. The following day, the Battle of Gravelines took place. The English fleet pressed its advantage, engaging the disorganized Spanish ships at close but controlled range. English gunnery proved highly effective, damaging hulls, masts, and rigging. The Spanish fought back, but were unable to regain formation. Several ships were heavily damaged, and the fleet was driven northward away from the Channel. With the Channel no longer under Spanish control and Parma's army unreachable, the invasion plan collapsed. Medina Sidonia decided that the Armada would return to Spain by sailing north around Scotland and then south along the western coast of Ireland. This route avoided English forces, but exposed the fleet to dangerous waters and unpredictable weather. As the Armada moved into the North Atlantic, it encountered severe storms. Many ships were already damaged and low on supplies. Navigation was difficult due to poor maps and strong currents. Along the coasts of Scotland and Ireland, numerous ships were wrecked on rocky shores. Survivors who reached land often faced starvation, capture, or execution, particularly in Ireland, where English authorities viewed them as invaders. By the time the remnants of the Armada reached Spain in the autumn of 1588, fewer than half of the original ships had returned. Estimates suggest that between 10,000 and 15,000 men died during the campaign, from battle, disease, starvation, and shipwreck. Spain's material losses were severe, though the empire retained much of its global power in the years that followed. In England, the failure of the Spanish Armada was widely celebrated. Queen Elizabeth I delivered a speech to troops at Tilbury, emphasizing national defense and unity. The victory reinforced England's naval confidence and accelerated the development of long-range gunnery tactics and ship design. The defeat of the Armada did not end the war between England and Spain, but it marked a turning point. Spain attempted further naval actions in later years, including its own counter-armadas, but none achieved the scale or ambition of the 1588 expedition. England continued to expand its naval capabilities, laying foundations for future maritime dominance. The Spanish Armada remains a defining episode in naval history. It demonstrated the limitations of rigid planning, the importance of logistics and communication, and the growing role of maneuverability and artillery in naval warfare. The campaign showed how environmental factors, such as weather and geography, could decisively influence military outcomes. Today, the Spanish Armada is studied not only as a military operation but as a complex interaction of politics, religion, technology, and strategy. Its failure reshaped the balance of power in Europe and altered the course of maritime history for centuries to come.